McFarland. KT, it's great to have you with us this morning, and it is a big day today. The last time President Putin was on U.S. soil, as I mentioned earlier, back in 2015. The last time Trump and Putin met in person was 2019. I know you've recently outlined how Trump's Putin strategy shows his negotiation genius. Can you tell us more about that? What are your thoughts on today's summit?
You know, President Trump is unlike any president I've worked for, and I've been in the White House Situation Room with 4 presidents going back to Nixon. The difference is President Trump gets an idea of what he wants to achieve, in this case, peace in Ukraine. He's not quite sure how he's going to get there, and so he's going to try option A and option B and option C. Option A, he was going to get both the Russians and the Ukrainians to the negotiating table, basically with his charm and personality. Didn't work. So option B, use economic and military pressure. It worked with Ukraine. They're at the table. It did not work with Vladimir Putin. So today's all about option C. Now, if it doesn't work, what happens? There'll be an option D. And what's option D? Serious consequences to the Russian economy. There are a lot of things President Trump can do to really bring the Russian economy to a crippling halt. He doesn't want to do that because what he really is looking for is a way past Ukraine, and he wants a relationship with Russia that might pull Russia away from the Chinese orbit.
And we've been talking a lot this week about the serious consequences, because those were the words, of course, that Donald Trump used when talking about this, KT. What do you think? I know you said that's option D, of course. What do you think some of those consequences may be? Obviously, we're talking about sanctions and really hitting the Russian economy.
Yeah, no, we don't do any real trading with Russia, so we don't sanction them. It doesn't really matter. But a lot of other countries do, and they buy Russian oil, they buy Russian natural gas. So we could impose secondary sanctions on those countries. Now, countries are not supposed to buy Russian stuff, but they do. They violate the sanctions, whether it's India or China or Turkey. They all violate those sanctions, and they buy Russian oil and gas. In fact, some European countries still violate the sanctions and buy Russian natural gas. So what could we do? We go to those countries, all of whom need to trade in the United States, have access to our market. And as President Trump said to India, look, stop buying Russian oil. If you do continue to buy Russian oil, we're going to charge you such high tariffs, you'll never be able to sell your goods in America. So that's one thing we could do. And without that oil income, Russia's broke, can't fight any wars, can't do much of anything. Number 2 is that Russia has about $300 billion in a frozen reserve fund. We could unfreeze that and access that and maybe give it to the Ukrainians. And then there's another thing, probably the most potent and the most immediate, which is we, the U.S. banking system, controls the international banking system. And we could just freeze Russia out of that. So Russia could be walking away. Plan D is a really bleak economic prospect for Russia.
And we know that Zelensky flew to Germany, and him, along with other European leaders, of course, had that video conference call with President Trump a few days ago ahead of this summit. How do you think our allies are viewing this meeting between Trump and Putin?
Well, they're all clutching their pearls, right? And they're all saying, oh, you can't give up any of Ukraine. You can't do this. You can't do that. Well, all right, but who's the enforcer here? I mean, the Ukrainians, they're fighting. They're getting American weapons. A lot of it is now paid for by the Europeans. But what do the Europeans want? Do they want World War III? Do they really want the United States and NATO to fight Russia? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So it's, let's look at the art of the possible. Sometimes you have to negotiate with guys you don't like because you need to have the prospect of peace going forward. And I think that's what Donald Trump's doing.